Christina, Universe Citizen presents New Era Religion, Episode 10, March 20, 2022. Philosophical Recognition of Life. Relevant links will be provided. You can read the entire transcript on my website, newerareligion.online. Now that metaphysical intellect has been informed that the vector equilibrium is the maximum domain of a nucleus, and that in its own right synergetics is primarily the geometry of the nucleus, mostly the fundamental behaviors, the central behaviors, we can ask, how does such metaphysical generalized conceptioning relate to our ordinary concerns in every respect to survival? Survival, of course, is multidimensional across the spectrum of emotional and other senses, including the thought process as we experience life on Earth. Life, as we can read in Synergetics 531.05, has been treated by the Church as physical, which, when the human mind's metaphysical conceptualities come into the thought process, philosophy and geometry, when integrated, provide a single conceptual system, language, and accounting for both the metaphysical and the physical. Synergetics 251.50. Symbolic icons are physical, and so too is the artificial intelligence of the robot. The fetus is physical, and philosophical recognition involves consciousness and identity, with awareness of conception closest correlating to metaphysical, weightless life of zero dimensions. Multidimensional occurrences of events happen in the environments of universe, whether we specifically and immediately tune in to the experience as the center of the generalized content of disseminated information. It may well correlate to what humans superficially identify throughout ranges of consciously focused on selections from the enormous amounts of irrationality that bombard our senses. It does so along differently directed intents and purposes. Most of those intentions are otherness controlled in a coordinated effort to distract intellect from recognizing and utilizing its inherently integral metaphysical generalized conceptioning field of thought. Thought is equal to the relevant set, that is equal to insideness and outsideness, that is equal to 4 stars, the conceptuality of which is the tetrahedron. Theoretically, we can identify the thought as a structural integrity patterning of the tetrahedron. By so doing, it becomes the referential system that we can say is systemic. Thus, metaphysical intellect's differential discernment of relevance from non-relevance is advantaged by knowing of a focused upon complex, the events of which are of universe, as a corroborating patterning integrity and conceptual liberation from the inherited detriments of the PRJWBCS. Politics, religion, justice, war, belief complex schemes that are never resolved. This is because any or all of those historically perplexing factors initiated from pure imagination as to whom, what, when, where, and why, the next steps will always trace back to the fact that the minimum structural system of universe, the central and nuclear behavior, was not consciously considered relevant to survival in multidimensional anticipatory realities. Synergetics 400.06. Little to no attention is focused on thought as a consequence of the phenomenon time, as well as a consequence of the phenomena referred to as the afterimage. Thinking involves the afterimage. Humans do not exist in an instantaneous universe. Instant is so fast in split-second comprehension compared to the speed of light. Our cognition and recognition involve a conceptuality and a lag rate between apprehension and comprehension, where perhaps the tetrahedron's 6 degrees of freedom and comprehension of the underway events correlate. They can only do so in a compatibility of thought, action, thought, language coordination, when the observing mind and its articulating awareness are self-accredited as a self-validating participant communicator. In quotes, part of the conceptuality is the lags, which brings in the 6 degrees of freedom. R. Buckminster Fuller, Timeless, April 1st, 1972. Apparently, the degrees of freedom are brought into the metaphysical generalized conceptioning field of thought, induced thus by the generalized content of disseminated information. The universal communications are continuous, which the interpersonal communications are subset events of, that can cause the greatest disturbances to the extreme imbalances and instability experienced by our world's populations. To think, and perhaps we are programmed by the PRJWBCS education agendas. Our humanity has been alienated from eternal universe upon which the phenomenon time is imposed. In turn, humans are imposed upon by the false premised, long-established, inadequate information authorities that expects conformity because that is how those generations were programmed as far back in history as our evolution species, humans of a mind, can go. Doing so would be less valuable time spent compared to consciously exploring the geometry of thinking mindfully that thoughts are systemic, and that metaphysical intellect is a function of omnirational, omnidirectional, omnipulsative, omniscient universe. Synergetics 529.09. Intuition seems to be tuning into the events of universe that are integrally relevant to the individual's design as an evolving entity unlike anyone else, in order to control the event fields of the inherited PRJWBCS, which are superficially contrived, even though of great physical power that dominates any objective, accreditation to the God of religions and the balancing scales of justice. Analogically, metaphorically, humans behave like putty in the hands of the deceiver, easily manipulated. And this is because humans of a mind beyond all measure love truth so much they trust that the others do likewise, when that may be the furthest intention and purpose for the coexisting, interacting, intertransacting, interrelating communications process. Perhaps metaphysical intellect as a function of universe, eternal, omniscient mind, Yom, can more easily associate the universal communications process as a critically important contextual parameter to which genuinely sincere authorities truly want to coordinate thought and language specifically toward realizing a world that can work for everyone. Historically, perpetually, the PRJWBCS do not work for everybody, and in fact cause great harm in almost all aspects of daily life living with our own species on planet Earth. Our species is an evolution species. Each of us has a brain. Everyone has a mind that can be used in conjunction with the brain's cerebral circuitry design without necessarily tuning into each neuronal network and specific area of the brain where variously tuned in frequencies as memory sets are stored. Memory sets are stored in the brain, but apparently not in any specific order, and so recalling the specific set as consciously observed events usually are approximate awareness, as memory serves the mind's recollection. In the meanwhile, defensive strategies correlating to survival is set into motion, becoming constituent parts of the interrelating whole, WHOLE, dynamic, without the mind actually purposely or able to figure out every possible interfering frequency. Please leave relevant comments so I don't remain clueless about what's on your mind, even though reading the comments is left to my discretion.